The first thing I recalled was seeing 3 fingers and a thumb on a hand come towards me to pull me out of the van. I was more than a little frightened. I was quite traumatized by it. I was very awake, sitting up, and had no reference for this. I was removed from the van. My friend remained asleep beside me. And as I stood at the end of the van, there was a being that I could not look at, a very tall, what felt very large and very tall being standing in front of me, but I was not able to raise my head to look up. On each side of me, there was what I've since come to understand is referred to as grays, one on each side of me. My hands were hanging down at my sides, and they were, without touching me, with their hands underneath me, they were levitating me somehow off the ground, about 5 or 6 inches. I was fairly paralyzed, not able to look around. I could look down and see one at each side of me, and we began to move forward.
They go through a period where they're kind of calmed down, they're put on a table, and certain examinations take place, certain procedures. Very often there are areas of skin removed, leaving a little circular scar in depth, what you call scoop marks. We don't know what they do with this flesh, but it's taken. And there are often reproductive procedures which involve, with men, sperm samples being taken, and with women, needles which go in the abdomen or in the vagina, but we believe this has to do with harvesting ova.
Fetuses are implanted, little tiny embryos. Fetuses are removed. This is standard material. This is standard stuff. They're taken off the table or taken into another room. They might see a bunch of babies in the other room. They have to hold the baby. Women have to feed the baby sometimes. They might be taken into a room where they see, well, let me just say that the babies that they see are strange-looking babies. They look sort of like half human, half alien. Sometimes they look more human, actually, but still odd. They're taken into a room where they see toddlers sometimes, kids who are maybe 2, 3, 4 years old, who are playing with some toys. They play with the children, play with the toys. The toys are unusual toys. They have these neurological staring procedures with the children, who will look into their eyes very closely. They might have other procedures where they'll see a room filled with vats, jars, I should say, containers, clear glass or clear plastic or whatever, containers with fetuses in them in different stages of development. They will have all sorts of other procedures that happen to them. They're then taken back to their normal environment, put back where they were on the couch watching the television or whatever, and they forget immediately what happened to them. All they know is that they were watching one television show, and not only is that show over, but the next 2 shows are over with as well, and they're still sitting there, and maybe they put the can of beer in their hand, they still have the can of beer in their hand, and they figure, what happened? And then they just forget it. Can't explain it, and they just move on.
One person described a drawing of the table. She didn't put anybody on the table, but she described the aliens around the table. The regular little aliens were about her size. She was, I don't know, she was maybe 8 or something. But there was this one tall one. And that's usually the one who's sort of the one in charge.
Drawings of abductors have been made by many abductees, where the large eyes and the small cheek seems to be typical characteristics for the so-called gray alien, named after the skin tone.
See, one of the interesting things about this is that all the evidence we get confirms the reality of this over and over again. It doesn't disconfirm it.
The so-called hybrids, allegedly a blend of human beings and grey aliens, is today reported in a majority of the cases investigated.
Alien eyes, but with what seems to be a little girl. It was the alien, the hybrid child.
A hybrid child.
Yeah. And what's interesting, again, the eyes are very peculiar.
Yeah.
The hair was not combed or brushed, and didn't really cover the head properly.
Okay.
And she's one of the mothers. So what it seemed to be was that there was a program where people were picked up again and again and again as if they had been studied, they were being studied over their lifetimes. And they were sort of automatically part of a program which was genetic in function. And it seems that we discovered that if a person was having abduction experiences and had children of his or her own, normal human children, that often those children would also in turn become abductees, as if the aliens were studying a particular bloodline for perhaps psychological reasons, emotional reasons. We don't know exactly why, but they seem very interested in the way the minds worked of these people. The emotions, they don't seem to have the emotions that we have. And it was as if they wanted to kind of learn our range of emotions somehow. It seems as if, in a strange way, we're teaching them without being asked to. It's involuntary teaching, but we're being examples, as if they want the richness of the human spirit and the human emotional life to be somehow blended with their own incredible technological gifts.
I really understood that they covet and envy the emotional makeup of humanity. They can't find it in their testing. They're trying to find it like we do, like on this planet, animal behaviors. As they study animals, will watch how they react in a maze. They're doing the same thing to us, trying to find out what it is that motivates us. What motivates motherly love? What is this intangible thing? They can't find it, and they want it. They're frightened of it, and that's why they subdue us, because they realize that it's a volatile thing, and it's unpredictable on one hand, but on the other hand, I believe they covet it. In this particular experience, that came out. And I began to try to define, and I said, I got it, you want what we have. This is what's got the species fascinated with us, why we are so incredibly different. And in this instance, I realized that we may be on the forefront of something that some of the other species are not. So what if emotions are actually part of the highest evolution possible? And perhaps we as humans are at the forefront of this, and we're clumsy with it. We don't know what to do with it in our evolution. But instead of being behind these other species who have none or almost no development, maybe we're at the head of the game. Why would so many species be interested in Earth? Why would so many species be interested in humanity in this way? Why? If we are one of a billion planets or a million, whatever planets that could be sustaining life, why this little tiny, tiny little nothing planet? Why would we have this kind of activity if there wasn't something special here? I believe that may be it.
Another bizarre phenomenon is reported from people who claim to have been in contact with ETs, and then detecting a small foreign object in their body, which is considered to be an implant. The rare characteristics of these objects led to a study by a medical doctor and surgeon. After removing several of these considered implants and having them analyzed, amazing results were presented.
We found that the biology of the object, the object is covered with a biological membrane which seems to prevent the human body from reacting to it by any kind of a rejection or inflammation reaction. We find that there's absolutely no wound or portal of entry or scar where these things entered the body. And looking at the metallurgy, we find things such as a meteoric iron. We find the nickel-iron ratios that are similar to meteorites. They've been tested in numerous laboratories now Los Alamos National Labs, New Mexico Tech, University Labs, and many, many other laboratories. In this last case, in addition to that, we find that there are structures such as carbon nanotubes, multi-rectangular sodium chloride crystals. We find that there are a list of elements, says Americanium, Sumerianum, a number of different elements that are not normally found. We also find things like many numerous isotopic ratios, which indicate the material does not come from here. And in addition to this, as an example, we find that in existence by itself in this last object is uranium-238, which on the Earth cannot exist by itself. There's both biological and metallurgical evidence here, which is beyond the shadow of a doubt, most compelling, and indicates that the human race is been and has been for perhaps many years being interfered with by some non-terrestrial intelligence.
The way this thing looked when you looked up at it.
But are the abductions of people only conducted by one particular group of aliens?
Even when they're full of mistakes.
Are there other alien groups that contact individuals on different bases?
So I know of, I would say, at least 60 kinds of extraterrestrial beings that have visited the people whom I work with. And this information all comes through the regressions that we have done. Now, some beings come to be mentors to their human beings. And by the way, the beings seem to work with a person for the person's lifetime.
They looked very human. Their hands were not their hands were very different though. The fingers were much longer, and they were very, very thin, very long, a little bit longer necks. They had white hair, and it sort of came up a little bit here into a V shape, the hair, a little bit wavy, and about shoulder length. And they had quite large blue eyes, a perfectly formed small nose, and smaller lips. When I was on board the craft, they gave me, these blonde beings gave me information that is relevant to our time on this earth right now. And they gave me messages that they asked me to share with really anyone who will listen. They're very specific for the humanity and how we have a choice, that the process in which we are evolving, if we continue on the path that we're on, that it will be just no choice, it will become destructive. It was explained to me that they have been here in the past. They have said, we have come in the past to help in the process of change on the earth, and we are here once again. They have been here since the beginning of the creation of man, and that they are here to only assist in maintaining this earth, protecting it from any and all things that may harm it, and that includes us. So if nuclear war were to try and be brought upon the earth, it will not happen. They will stop it, because it would be the destruction of the earth. So this is the only time that they will step in on a grand scale, is if great destruction were to happen to the earth itself, or to every human being on the planet.